Alrighty, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this AIST webinar. Today we'll be covering advice for young professionals on navigating the steel industry's current marketplace. My name is Lauren Craiglow and I'm the marketing administrator here at AIST. That's the Association for Iron and Steel Technology. I hope everyone's doing well and continuing to stay healthy and safe during this time. Our objective today is to share insights from 4 experienced steel professionals that were just starting their careers when the recession hit in 2008 and 2009. They'll each be discussing their respective experiences, sharing some of the hard lessons they learned, and offering a bit of advice for young professionals on how you can even leverage some of this downtime in your favor. The hope is that you'll be able to apply some of the same principles they discuss to help navigate through this unprecedented time. And with their feedback and understanding, we look to ensure that the next generation of steel professionals comes out of this pandemic much stronger than before it started. Now, before we kick off the panelist discussion, I'd like to go through a few important housekeeping reminders for everyone. First up, AIST's antitrust guidelines. Please take a moment to read through some of the bullet points on your screen. AIST's antitrust guidelines emphasize the law that prohibits agreements between 2 or more individuals or businesses to regulate prices or quantities of goods and services, to allocate customers or territories, to limit a competitor operations or otherwise unreasonably restrain business activity. Everyone who participates in any AIST event must follow these guidelines. I also want to brief you on our anti-harassment policy. Please take another few moments to read the text on your screen. AIST's anti-harassment policy emphasizes the importance to provide a harassment-free environment regardless of age, race, religion, disability, or gender. Alrighty, so just a few more notes for all of our attendees out there. Your audio has been disabled. And if you'd like to ask any questions to our panelists during this time, please use the question and answer function in Zoom. If you move your mouse around a bit, you'll see both a question and answer feature as well as a chat feature. Please use that question and answer feature if you'd like to ask any questions. The host, myself, and the moderator will determine which questions are presented to the panelists, assuming, of course, that we have enough time to get to them at the end. And if we are not able to get to any audience questions at the end, our panelists will actually follow up with everyone individually. Also, this session is being recorded and it'll be available in the upcoming weeks on AIST's website as well as our YouTube channel. And lastly, if you have any technical difficulties at all during this webinar, please email training@aist.org. Now, before we officially kick off the discussion, I want to give a brief overview of AIST membership for our young professional audience. In order for AIST to keep working towards our mission of advancing the iron and steel industry, we must continue to support this rising generation. AIST considers young professionals those that fall within the bracket of 30 years of age or younger. The AIST Foundation actually sponsors a free first year of membership and a discounted membership every year after that until that young professional turns 30. Young professionals are also eligible for a 50% discount on registration at AIST Tech. That's our annual Iron and Steel Conference and Exposition, where we also host a Young Professionals Roundtable as well as a reception offering an opportunity for our YPs to connect and network. Now, typically, if you join today, you'd receive membership through the end of 2020. But as a special offer for those of you that are attending today's webinar, we're extending that free membership offer through the end of 2021. So an additional 5 months of membership for free. And to redeem this special offer, please visit aist.org/YP webinar membership. Alrighty, so before I turn it over to our moderator for today's discussion, I want to take a moment to thank our webinar sponsor, Tokai Carbon. Tokai Carbon is an American-based graphite electrode producer with 2 manufacturing sites in America's heartland. During the coronavirus-related industry slowdown, Tokai seized the opportunity to complete multiple production and quality improvements at their U.S. locations, totaling over $70 million. Tokai is committed to the American steel industry and will continue to provide regular updates on developments via their LinkedIn page and website. Thanks again, Tokai Carbon. And with that, I'd like to officially introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Shannon Clark. Shannon began her career in the steel industry in 1999 at ArcelorMittal Dofasco, GP, as a technical leader in the process automation department. Moving through a series of positions in scheduling, sales, and order fulfillment, Clark is currently a senior specialist in the metallurgy, quality, and world-class continuous improvement department. She holds an MBA in operations management and management of innovation from McMaster University, and also completed her bachelor's degree and her metallurgy of iron and steel certificate at McMaster. She joined AIST in 2000 and has served on the executive committee of the Northern Member Chapter since 2012. Clark received an AIST Presidential Citation in 2017. Shannon's going to introduce our panelists for today and explain the structure of today's webinar. Shannon, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much, Lauren. So welcome to everyone today. I'm excited to introduce our 4 panelists. So these experienced steel industry experts are going to share their information, share some good advice for you, and give you some ideas about managing through these times. So let me introduce them. We'll start with Garrett Urey from Stelco. He's the primary utilities area manager. And next we have Caleb Fitch. He's the EAF LMF day supervisor at Nucor. We have Patrick Quiney. He's the melt cast metallurgist at Nucor. And finally, Lauren Keating, who's the general manager of engineering for Songer Services. So welcome to all of our panelist guests today. So as we mentioned, we have 4 questions that we want these panelists to help us explore a little bit. So just a reminder that these panelists were in your position in the downturn of 2008, 2009. So they've been exactly where you are. And so they have some great advice that's going to help you manage through this time right now. So we're going to start with the first question. We're going to ask each one of our panelists, what was the role at the time, what was your role at the time of the last downturn, and how did your responsibilities change as a result of it? So we're going to go to Pat to answer that question for us first. Pat?
Thank you, Shannon. I hope the glare is not bothering too many people, but I joined Nucor in 2007, right out of school, and worked in various areas of melt shop, and then came out of a shutdown in end of October 2008, and the world had changed for steelmaking. I continued to work in the same division I was at until about 2010, when some of the positions within our company started to open up, and I got the opportunity to earn a position as a shift supervisor within Nucor at a different division, relocated from Alabama to Illinois, and worked there for 2 years in a different role and responsibility, technical role to more people-oriented, and then things didn't work out. We can talk about that here in a little bit, but got the opportunity to relocate out here to Nucor in North Carolina and just have some lessons learned from that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Pat. We're going to go to Caleb and hear about his roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. It's interesting. You said steel industry experts, and I don't know when I went from young professional to steel industry expert, but it happened in a flash, right? So I started in the industry around 2006, spring of 2006, coming out of Penn State with a material science degree. Excited. It was the heyday. I mean, the party was on. We couldn't spend enough money to make another ton of steel. Tons of opportunities out there to travel and learn and do whatever you wanted to do. By 2008, I was finishing up a 2-year term as a maintenance supervisor in the melt shop. And to be honest, I was ready for a break, a young guy working Fridays and Saturdays and, looking for different opportunities. And I didn't expect it, but I got a chance to go to Brazil on a 2-year exchange. And mid 2008 is when we made that decision. And by the end of 2008, it started to look like maybe a bad decision because, I was leaving a position where I was directly involved in the process and I was very needed. And I was going into a position that seemed to be created just for the opportunity to go to Brazil and do that kind of thing. So it was tough. I went to another country that was experiencing similar downturn at the same time, and to be honest, held the United States responsible for a lot of the issues within the world at the time, and found myself oftentimes defending on not only the steel industry but politics, and moved from leading people to leading a technical discussion. So spent 2 years there, really weathered most of the downturn while I was there, and came back to Gerdau 2010. Spent a few more years there. Spent some time in Canada at the Gerdau Whitby mill before about 2 years ago I came to Nucor Hertford as a melt cast or day supervisor.
Okay, thanks, Caleb. Garrett, why don't you tell us about some of your responsibilities?
Great. Thanks, Shannon. So similar to Pat and Caleb, 2008, I was a management associate. So I kind of caught the tail end of, the good times. And then 2008 happened, and very quickly kind of found myself, working at United States Steel, management associate. I was at the blast furnace, and all of a sudden we were idling the blast furnace. I was going to the coke ovens, then I was moved to Hamilton Works. And I kind of bounced around for a little bit, but my opportunities is that I found myself as a shift manager as we went through that period, and I took on more responsibility, and I transitioned, and I got to learn a lot of the operational processes in different areas that might not have happened so quickly in my career. So that's kind of where I was at the start of this.
Okay, and let's hear from Lauren about what Lauren's responsibilities were.
Thanks, Shannon. I started with US Steel back in June of 2007. So like Caleb said, times were good. Spending was at a peak. You couldn't do projects fast enough. I've always had the responsibility at various points in my career for projects, which I love. I started out in coke ovens, worked a bit in blast furnaces, did some sheet finishing and tubular projects, some steel making and casting. And now with Songer Services, I'm on the contractor side, still doing projects. So I love projects. What I found during the downturn in the 2008-2009 period was that we went from looking at major rehabilitation projects, new assets, building new, to really what we could do with best practices, efficiencies, and maintaining our current assets. So a lot of spending was curtailed. The projects stayed in place, but they really took on a new perspective. And with the new perspective, the teams I was working on at the time really had to shift and change how we were looking at things to match what was happening in the industry and what was going on with the market and the spending that was available at that time.
So it sounds like you each had a kind of a different experience, but some of the similar things with the flexibility. You had to be flexible. There were some international opportunities to take advantage of. Lots of you had different opportunities to take advantage of, and just seizing on those opportunities and making the most of them. Sounds like it's been a real success for you. So if we go to question number 2, and I'm going to ask this one to Caleb first. So our question number 2 is, what lessons did you learn that would apply to the industry's current situation? So what kind of lessons did you learn at that time that would help?
It's interesting because some things are the same in every downturn and some things are different, right? Today we're dealing with a coronavirus, and I'm just thinking right now, when I went to Brazil, we were dealing with the swine flu, right? So similar in some regards in that case, but things are a lot different, but some things stay the same. And the reality is, and it's something that's awesome about steelmakers, is that they never quit, right? So you'll read in the industry news where it seems like, that's the last nail in the coffin for this mill or that company. And it's just another challenge for a steelmaker. As the times get more difficult, they come up with better solutions. They're innovators and problem solvers, stubborn, really, and won't give up. And that's something you can rely on. So I've learned that through the downturns, is that when, it really gets hard, you can count on your teammates and your colleagues to be really putting it all in there to save their jobs and save your job. So that's something pretty awesome. The other lesson I would share is that everybody's going through a really difficult time. So as a young professional, you're trying to get into the industry. Think about the guys getting close to retirement who are trying to get out of the industry. They may have lost half of their retirement savings, in a short period of time. People are trying to put their kids through school. There's a lot of things going on that create stress in the workplace because of the personal impacts outside of the workplace. So be empathetic to that, understand that and be patient with people, and you'll be a lot further off. And these downturns, they come and they go. And if you take the right approach, you'll come out of it better than when you went into it.
That's great. Thank you, Caleb. Garrett, what kind of lessons did you learn that would be helpful for us?
Yeah, Caleb answered that really well. One thing I would say is, if you find yourself questioning, where you're at or what you're doing, it's, how can you make every day valuable? What can I get out of what I'm doing today that can help grow my confidence, my career, and help you when things turn around or you get back on a different path or you be back to where you were before.
Okay. Lauren, what kind of lessons did you learn that would be helpful now?
Shannon, I'd say just because the market situation has changed as a young professional, that doesn't mean that your contributions are any less valuable. They just take on a different perspective. There's still plenty of ways to learn and contribute to your teams, but as a young professional, you bring a fresh new perspective to the table, and that's important. That's a fresh set of eyes, and it's important for problem solving. So what you're bringing to the table is very valuable, and not to lose sight of that and make sure that you continue to put in the effort to make sure that your efforts are concentrated where they need to be and are concentrated on contributing to what the team is trying to accomplish. Also, I'd have to say that you're probably going to have to be flexible during this time. Flexibility is key at a lot of times in the steel industry, but especially during the downturn. So you may take on some new responsibilities or assignments that you had not anticipated or might be out of your comfort zone. It's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of those opportunities may set you on a path to network, meet people, take on new experiences that you wouldn't have had before. And it's just a different opportunity. So again, keeping that positive attitude and that work ethic in place will help tremendously and will still get you noticed. And you may end up in a far better place or situation than you would have been had you stayed where you're at. And then the last thing I'd say is there will be plenty of people who are frustrated during this time due to lack of resources or job uncertainty. That's kind of just the nature of the market conditions. But do your best to get not caught in negativity. So some commiseration with teammates or coworkers is certainly natural, but spending too much of your time complaining or otherwise being negative will really will not make for a very fun day, and it will not make for a very productive day. So staying positive, keeping a check on your attitude, and just focusing on what you can do to bring that value, I think will be more fulfilling personally, and also will get noticed professionally.
Okay, thank you for that, Lauren. And we're going to go to Pat for some of the lessons that he learned.
Well, I appreciate it, and coming forth in the line, it's tough to say anything that previous panelists didn't already say, because it sounds like we've had so many similar experiences. But the one thing that Caleb mentioned from the beginning is that in the years that I've been part of the steel industry, it's always gangbusters. It's good market, spend what you need to spend, get for production, and then it flips just like this. And it's happened before, and it'll happen again. It's the industry that we're in, and we go from spend what you need to spend to get the production going to ultimate efficiency, and every penny matters. And it's through that and being empathetic towards the team members and knowing that everybody has their own personal stuff that they're coming from, being able to find those opportunities, those new skill sets that may need to be helpful, that you can contribute and make individuals' days, lives, the company's life better by finding those efficiencies, because oftentimes people have been dealing with inefficiencies because there's not time to do that maintenance, repair, adjustment. And one of the opportunities that downtime provides is, you know what, if you screw it up, you're not out production. There's not the production to be had come the end of the month or whatever that may be. So now's a perfect time to get in, tear apart, understand the equipment that you're working with and people that you're working with, because there's not necessarily that rush to that next ton.
Well, I think that you've all talked about some really great lessons and talking about perspective, taking advantage of opportunities and new responsibilities. to embrace this change, but at the same time be flexible, be compassionate, have some empathy for your coworkers. But again, just be positive and know that the cyclical nature of our industry is going to come back. So I think that that was great. We're going to go to question number 3. So question number 3 is, did you have a change in perspective of the steel industry after the last downturn? So for question number 3, I'm going to go to Garrett first.
Yeah, so I didn't have a change in perspective. I've kind of always considered the steel industry to be a very valuable part of the global economy. It did open my eyes to the value and competitive advantage of a well-managed supply chain. You need to survive a downturn, and you do that by looking in all the corners where maybe they got overlooked when you were running through the good times. And then when you get there and you're competitive enough through achieving that to sustain yourself through this, you want to keep that mindset. So it was a lesson learned to keep that mindset after we come out of this, so that we maintain that cost advantage and stay in there in the long term.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. Well, let's go to Lauren to answer that question. So again, what was your change in perspective?
Yeah, I agree with Garrett. I mean, flexibility is key, right? We've said that before, and it goes for both on the professional side and on the personal side. So during a downturn, what we mean by flexibility is a lot of times we're more focused on the practices, the systems, the organization, the optimization, those types of things, right? So that we can get the most out of what we are able to spend and maintain the assets until we're able to do further work or do other projects that have been planned that may have been put off. So maintaining that flexibility on the professional side from a company standpoint, a team standpoint, an individual standpoint really is key. And that's a constant battle and a downturn, and something that needs to maintain a focus on. But also on the personal side. So as a young professional, a lot of you will probably be coming out of college or coming out of a training program and just getting set up for the first time in a professional environment. So on a personal side, budgeting yourself and keeping tabs on what you need on a baseline basis for budget and for living expenses, that's key too, because that sets you up to be able to not be distracted while you're trying to do your job and to be able to focus on your job. So a lot of us would have come in at a really good time in the steel industry when there may have been a lot of overtime available or other benefits that were available during the good times that may not be there during the tough times. So not setting ourselves up to count on those benefits that may be there during an upcycle, so that you're prepared and ready to weather a down cycle, will really help on a personal side too. And then that helps in your professional career.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Pat, what about change of perspective? How did your perspective change?
I appreciate Lauren's statements there, because I do feel very fortunate having joined Nucor, and there was a mechanic the week I joined Nucor. He said, "You're a broke college kid, right?" I said, "Yep, I am." He said, "Now you're making more money than you know what to do with." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "You have to do," and the financial course was Dave Ramsey. And that didn't hit until I took it, and my future wife at the time visited, and she attended the last class. She said, "Wow, that's pretty heavy." And so we shelved it, and we didn't really live by it until I did get that opportunity to relocate to Illinois. And I had got that first big promotion. I was inflated and thinking, now I've made it. I've got that job, and I'm headed down the path of career, headed up the ladder, whichever way you want to see it. But we still couldn't buy a house. We still didn't have the money where it was. And so that was distracting. And we ended up living in what we affectionately call the little house, and doing gazelle-like intensity to anybody that's familiar with the program, and becoming debt-free and the whole thing. So Lauren's point's very real. It's distracting for individuals. It's distracting your team. And it is life lessons for yourself that then roll into the business, and you sort of understand why the business flips from pay any dollar to get this project done to nope, no, that project no longer needs to happen. Because at this point, cash is king. And to Garrett's point, surviving this downturn is going to be the most important so that we can continue to provide for customers and team members and shareholders and everything moving forward. So the other change in perspective that I personally had was that the team that you're working with is pivotal. So your contributions to the team, not that at the time I got the shift supervisor position fresh out of college. I thought I had everything made. I got hired because I was great. Whatever it is, knowing that the team didn't need me to bring the book in and say, this is what the book says you should be doing or shall be done. But being able to find those opportunities to help the team with the team's problems was my change in perspective. It wasn't about me. It was about how I can help the team be successful and really getting those people in a good mind space to help each other and move everybody forward.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Pat. And we're going to go to Caleb for what was the change in perspective that you had?
So I think Lauren and Pat are right on. I mean, on the personal finance side, you got to get your own house in order if you want to be successful at work and professionally. So I won't add anything to that. One thing I would say is that one thing that I realized very quickly as the industry consolidated is how small the steel industry can be. I was very fortunate to have a career with more than 10 years in the same company. You know, people my age don't seem to do that anymore, right? But through those 10 years, I saw people come and go, and they'd come back into my life as a vendor or, you know, at an AIST conference or new connection on LinkedIn, whatever that might be. As I transitioned in my career from one company to another, that was very important for me, you know, to have that professional network, both internal to the company and external. So I would say as you're going through the downturn and people are coming and going, you know, as the consolidation is happening, make sure you're developing those relationships and maintaining them through the years, because that'll come back and pay dividends later.
Thanks, Caleb. I think you've all shared some really great lessons, like lessons about flexibility and, you know, professional and personal goals, you know, kind of a survival to set up your savings, make sure that you're reducing your own stress, understand the stress of your coworkers, focus on your network, and just be resilient, right? And set yourself up so that that resilience comes easy. Okay, we're going to go to our last question, question number 4. This one I'm going to ask to Lauren. Lauren, what advice would you give to a current young professional in the steel industry to help move forward and add value? What could young professionals be doing to add value? Lauren?
All right, Shannon, I have a couple of things. I have some notes. So the first thing is no matter if the times are good or challenging, if you're in a market upswing or a downturn, you will get noticed if you stay productive and you stay committed to your assignments and teammates. And I think we've heard everyone talk about that, right? It's all about the team, right? It's not about the individual as much as it is about the team. So maintaining that clear focus on what the team's trying to accomplish, and then how can you contribute to that? Take some personal investment in it, take ownership of it. And really at the end of the day, that will help the team be successful, and it's gonna help you feel more rewarded and fulfilled by the work that you're doing. So that focus on the team and the contributions that you can make to make the team successful, I think really goes a long way. The second thing I have is no matter what your responsibility or your job position is, you need to try to get out into the field and into the operations as much as you can on a daily basis. That's where the difference is made. So your experience in the field will make you a valuable team member and more effective problem solver. And then another benefit is you're going to meet more people, and this is a good thing. So you meet more people, it's a huge benefit to your learning process. you're going to find people who are willing to teach and mentor and guide and offer advice in all different corners of the industry. You're going to find mentors that are traditional and who you'd expect to be able to lean on for advice and guidance. And then you're going to find mentors who you would have never thought would end up being such a huge advisor and benefit to you as you try to navigate your career. So some of your peers can be mentors, some people who seemingly have nothing to do with what you're doing can be mentors. And as Caleb said, it's a small industry. So these people you'll work with for years to come in different roles that you could have never anticipated make a big difference. So getting out into the operation as much as you can, making that difference, meeting people, listening, that will make a huge difference for you. Somewhat on the same lines, networking is a big deal, right? So networking and building relationships with your peers, your supervisors, mentors, these are all hugely beneficial. And if the relationship's working right, it's beneficial to you and it's beneficial to the other party. This is both internal to your company and external. So these can be people that you're working with. It can be supervisors that have moved on that you stay in touch with. It can also be people externally to your company. So vendors, contractors, suppliers, they count too. There's groups of people with a wealth of knowledge and experience in the industry. And all it takes is building those relationships, being willing to listen, ask questions, and you'll find a lot of people who are willing to help. Let's see, I had one more thing I wanted to make a point on, which was, so two more things. One is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Pat said it, right? Don't be fooled by people who seem like they know it all. They only know it because they probably screwed it up. So don't be afraid to get out there, make mistakes, own it. It's okay. Utilize those mentors to help you along the way. And then you will become the expert because you will have screwed it up and you will have all the knowledge in the world on that topic. So don't be afraid there. And the last thing I had is utilize resources like AIST. So AIST, you'll come into contact with people who you may not come into contact with on a day-to-day basis otherwise, but it's a great networking opportunity and a great resource to reach out and build relationships outside of your immediate work zone and those that you're coming in contact with on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. And just at this point, I'm just going to remind our audience that there is the Q&A box at the bottom. So as we're finishing up this last question, if there are more questions that you'd like to ask, please type those in. So after Lauren, we're going to go to Pat. So Pat, just to remind you the question, what advice would you give a current young professional in the steel industry to help them move forward?
Just in summary, it's the positivity, being the positive force with the team, yourself, not commiserating too much. Is that the right word, Lauren? But it's the positivity, it's your attitude in every situation that's going to shape your interactions with people and your interactions with problems, whatever that may be, moving forward. I would say take every opportunity, and as Lauren said, own it, become the expert, and internalize that to know whether that's your path. The fallacy we work in or sometimes tell ourselves is that there's a direct line from A to Z in any given career, and the more you can find space that you enjoy and with people that you enjoy working with, the more satisfaction you may find outside of work, because in the end, this is a job that we have, and we're thankful that it provides for us and our family, but this is the life we live. And if we go to work every day in a job we hate, it ultimately shows in our workmanship, it shows in our lifestyle and whatever. So take those opportunities, internalize it, and work with those mentors to develop skill sets or relationships so that you can move in a direction that you're interested in and ultimately be more productive for yourself, enjoy life more, and be more productive for your company.
Okay, thank you, Pat. And we're going to go to Caleb again for our question about what's some advice that you could give our audience.
So this is really why I wanted to do this call, is to have a chance to say this, and it's that do not bail on us, right? The industry needs you. The obstacle is part of the growing. You know, if you come through this, you'll find out that the challenge is what really leads to that family atmosphere we have in the steel industry, something that I personally really enjoy. So just don't give up, right? I mean, that passion that brought you to the steel industry, if it's in your blood, it's going to stay in your blood. So make that commitment and push through it. The other side of that is, people are watching you, right? They're seeing how this tests you. They're seeing how you handle the stress. You are the future leaders of that company, the company you're in, or the industry that we're in. So not only are we watching you, we're counting on you to do a good job, be present, do the work. If you're chief bottle washer, wash the bottles, right? Get out there and get it done. And you're going to find out that you're going to appreciate the opportunity after it's passed.
Caleb, I think that's fantastic advice. And we're going to go to Garrett for some of his advice. Again, what would you tell these young professionals listening?
Yeah, so very similar to everybody else, keep an open mind and a positive attitude. You might find yourself off course of what you are doing on the day-to-day activities months previous, but you never know what lies on other roads. Bring knowledge and experience gained prior to a downturn and exercise it in different areas. I met different people going through different operational areas, and we're starting a major outage project here at work, and I have a mentor back that I worked for years, who's been retired for a year and a half, and he's with me on this project. Those are the opportunities that came to me through keeping a positive attitude and an open mind, and knowing that the opportunity for growth was greater than the fear of failure. And you'll find in steel, it's some of the best people I've ever met, where they don't let people fall down, that fight to stay going forward. And you see that right now, and I saw it hugely the first time around, and now I hope that I can put that down to people that are coming in. You always take the time to talk things through and understand it's not always work, it can be personal life, but we're all in it together, and a lot of people have similar stories and build up opportunities. So
okay, thank you, Garrett. So I think that our audience here has gotten some great advice. Some of those things are, again, positive attitude, open mind, get out to the operations. That was Lauren telling you to go and see how things work, get some experience out there, develop your mentors. So find out who those people are who can give you those valuable lessons. Maintain your network, and whether that's with your peers, your mentors, build your knowledge, and enjoy your job, right? And as Caleb says, don't fail on it. Stick it through. That we have a great group here who has stuck with it and been successful. So I think that's a lot of great advice that this audience can take away. So that kind of concludes our formal questions. I can see here that there are lots of questions coming through on the question and answer. I have a couple here. I'm going to just start with the first one. So how did you make the decision to move to a new position or division? And what was the most challenging part of the process? So maybe we'll talk to Pat. You talked about moving to new positions and divisions. How did you do that, and what was the most challenging part?
So thank you, Shannon. Thank you for having questions, audience. I didn't know if anyone was still there. I'm just sort of talking to my own little head here on this, the panelists. But at the time, I mean, it's way back. I was, again, so in my own selfish headspace at the time that it was simply convinced that I got to start climbing the ladder and make that next jump. And every opportunity for the perceived or whatever that next level of responsibility was had to be applied for. And to some extent, where I went, Nucor is a large enough company that I had the opportunity to stay within Nucor, really wasn't necessarily part of it. Hindsight now, fast forward 10 years, I'm married, have a child, so much value outside of work and where I was then, it's a very different consideration. What I would do to consider, is the move worth it? Then it was just, does this title match what I perceive as the next level within our organization? If it did, I went. I traveled up there. At the time, I went with my wife, and we checked out the area, and at the time, I thought I provided an opportunity to say, all right, if you see any red flags, let me know. Hindsight, so many red flags. Don't know if I heard her say, this isn't for us. She may have said those exact words, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to people. I just had been so convinced in my own headstrongness, whatever it was, that I just went. Now, today, there's a huge quality of life component that matters to me and my wife and different things. So that's just 10 years difference.
Those are definitely some things to consider. I think I want to ask this question to Caleb. Caleb, you didn't even just move jobs, like you moved countries. So why don't you tell us, that must have been a pretty big decision. How did you make that decision, and what was your transition like?
Yeah, Pat said a lot of the same things. You know, in my case, it worked out very well for me, but I trusted the people who were telling me it was a great opportunity. You know, those steel industry experts who had screwed up enough in their career that they knew better at that point. But at the end of the day, I was just seeking opportunities to try to contribute, show the value I can bring to the company. I had a group of people saying it'd be great if you went and learned Portuguese. You know, it'd be great if you understood the Brazilian culture. It'd be great for your career. Everything was centered around, you know, this is going to help you get a leg up in the future. So it was a huge commitment, but like Pat mentioned, I didn't have kids and I didn't have a house. I didn't have a lot, you know. I picked up and I moved in a hotel for 2 years. I lived in a hotel for 2 years, and surprisingly, I had everything I needed. You know, I didn't need a huge 4-bedroom house at that time. You know? So I think that the flexibility I had as a young professional really helped in my decision, and I'm very thankful I made the move at the time, and I'm very thankful for the guidance I got from my mentors at the time who said it was a great idea.
Well, thank you very much for that. So, you know, again, it's the mentors that are going to help you recognize the great opportunities, and it's up to us to take advantage of them. Maybe we should go to question number 2 from the audience. What advice do you have if you're transitioning into a management role as a young professional with employees significantly older? And I'm going to ask this question to Lauren. Lauren, do you have some advice for that? So again, transitioning into a management role as a young professional with employees who are older.
Yeah, Shannon, I think that's probably one of the biggest transitions, right? So a lot of times as a young professional coming into the industry, you're focused on some technical aspects, what you can learn, what you can bring to the table. And then when you get the opportunity to transition to a management position, now you're responsible for people. And that's a whole different can of worms. It's hard. It's very challenging, especially if you've never been in that type of leadership or management role before. It's hard to get your feet on the ground and build that confidence. But nobody steps into that role knowing exactly what to do. I think that the more open-minded that you can be and maintain as much communication as you can with your team, the better off you'll be. And when you communicate, you really need to listen. You really need to listen. For some people will give you very direct feedback, and that can be helpful. Some will give you some subtle feedback, and you've really got to pay attention to that to try to identify what's working on your team, what's not working, where there needs to be some additional support or communication, and feel your way. And if you're open to that constant loop of feedback and really work at it, I think you'll be successful. But listening and communicating, it's hard. It can be very difficult, and it's very different from just learning yourself and being an individual contributor. to trying to put in place that infrastructure to manage a team and to support the success of a team. But I think that the listening and communication is key.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. So listening and communication. Garrett, what kind of advice would you have transitioning into this role, especially when some of your employees are significantly older?
Yeah, no, this is exactly where I found myself in 2008. I was a management associate. You're sort of learning the operation. They're kind of keeping you back a little bit. And then as we started to go into the recession, I was quickly thrown to a shift manager. So I found myself on continental shift pattern, on the back turn. Maybe there wasn't as much mentoring period on handoff of taking over running a blast furnace or on a coke oven shift. And you learn quickly that you got to communicate with people, and you have to work together, and not one person drives the place. It's a team of people, and if you learn to work together through the problems and you accept the fact that you don't know everything, and you will make mistakes, absolutely you're going to, but if you do it honestly and you do it openly, people will help build you up, and your confidence will grow, and you'll come through this realizing that it doesn't matter what age anyone is in there, that if good people are working hard together, things will get done. And that's the best approach to it. If you come in as the boss and you're hard-nosed and you're new, well, they're going to let you know that. But if you work together with them, you'll achieve what needs to get done, and everyone will go home safely, right?
Okay, thanks for that, Garrett. And I think both of you have just really said that communication is the key, and the age part doesn't really matter, that you need to listen, and it's about the team. And I think that's great advice. So we're having some really great questions come through here. We're going to go to question number 3. So this one's really timely for right now. How would you recommend forming connections with colleagues and getting effective new role training while working from home in the pandemic? So we have lots of people working from home. How do you form these connections that are so important? And how do you get some training while you're at home? So let's maybe ask Pat this right now. You don't look like you're at home, but maybe you have some advice for us.
Well, I was trying to reflect. Thank you again, Shannon. Thanks panelists for being here and people still asking questions. Up to the end, it says in the pandemic. I have no idea. This is totally foreign. I was thinking about how difficult that would be in a pandemic to draw parallels now to what I had the opportunity to do in 2008, 2009. The advantage I had was, again, we weren't running as well. The production wasn't as crucial at the time. So there was time. There was time to walk into people's offices and ask questions and dig into equipment. To Lauren's point earlier, if you can get in the field, everything you can do to get out and get that personal experience with the equipment or the process or the people you're working with, it's invaluable. And the best I can recommend during a pandemic is to have the courage to make appointments with people, you have to forge those relationships and find ways into scheduling time to talk and to know people and show genuine interest on developing skills or knowledge on whatever you need to move forward. I get tired of hearing myself talk, but if somebody's interested in asking questions and the what fors and the how to's, seeing them use that, making good decisions moving forward has really changed the satisfaction that I personally get from work. So I would think other experts, because I certainly don't feel like an expert, would be as willing to contribute to your development moving forward. So I guess all the way around, find time, have the courage to ask and listen.
That's great advice, just to be bold and make those appointments and make those connections, but you have to be the one that sort of starts that, right? Caleb, what would you have in terms of advice for how do you form connections maybe while you're working from home?
mean, the one thing I would add here is that we have a lot more technology today than we had back the last time we went through it, right? So everybody's learning Zoom, everybody's learning Microsoft Teams. And I mean, at the same time, I was talking to my grandmother on Facebook, FaceTime, whatever, Messenger stuff before this as well. So the technology is accessible. I think we're learning together. I can't say what I learned in 2008 that's going to help right now, but I can say what the young professionals today are doing to help me, so I'm a little bit out of touch now, right? So thankfully we have some young people here who are willing to schedule the time, like Pat said, they said, hey, we're going to meet at 1 o'clock. We're going to talk and we're going to do this Teams thing. We're going to struggle through it. It's going to be weird, but it's a responsibility of mine to try to maintain those relationships today. And I appreciate the help they're giving me to do that. So I would really say is use the technology and help the people that aren't comfortable with the technology. Like, don't just give up because they don't want to do it. Really get out there and try to show them the tools and encourage them to participate, because it's as much their responsibility as it is your responsibility, and they may not know how to do it. So that would be my recommendation.
I think that's great. Again, that's one of the real assets that young people have is this technology, and maybe where some of us could use a little help with that. So I think that's great advice. There's another question here. In a position centered around project work, how does one continue to add value to their department when project spending is reduced to zero? Now, I'm going to go to my friend Lauren for this one because she talked a little bit about it. When everything goes down to nothing, how can you still be valuable? I think you gave us kind of some suggestions there, but maybe if you could share those again.
Yeah, so my experience with this really very early in my career was when I came in, specifically, we were looking at rehabilitating all of US Steel's coke making assets. So we were looking at the coke batteries and looking at some major projects to repair, to rehabilitate, to build new. And it was a large scale project. And then whenever the downturn came, of course, a lot of that spending wasn't available. So it's early on my career, I'm trying to figure out same thing. How do I contribute? How do I maintain a presence here and be a valuable team member when things are changing and the projects aren't moving forward because the funding's just not there? I think that you can find some maybe not so obvious ways to still contribute. So like we talked about earlier, a lot of times things are going to shift from spending to spending just to maintain the assets, just spending what you need to spend, and finding efficiencies and ways to do that don't require a lot of cash, right? In my experience, what that meant was there was a lot of initiatives going on that we were looking at, and there needed to be a way to organize those to be an effective tool for the team to look at while we were figuring out which one of those we wanted to prioritize and focus on. So it was pretty simple, but it was effective. I kind of slid into a role where I was queen of the Excel sheet that was keeping track of those initiatives and who was doing what and trying to keep everyone on track with who had to lead on what and when things were due. So that's pretty simple, right? Developing an Excel spreadsheet as a communication tool, but it was very effective. It kept me in the game as a young professional and taught me a lot of lessons about the teamwork and the coordination involved and how effective that can be. So look for ways to contribute that may seem simple to you, but will be valuable and effective.
I think that's fantastic advice too. Thank you for that, Lauren. Our time is getting close here to the end. I was reflecting on our talk today, and there's a saying that tough times never last, tough people do. And I think all of the panelists have given us some, lessons and some tips, shared their knowledge to help us be those tough people. They've also helped us understand really how to see adversity as an opportunity, right? We're kind of in that spot right now, and there are ways for you to, as a young professional, to seize on some of these opportunities. How to be resilient, how important resilience is, how to adapt to new and changing circumstances and use those circumstances to your advantage. We all have to maintain our positivity and how that's going to be a real benefit for us. And kind of last, how to be brave and bold in these difficult situations. So I'd really like to thank our panelists, Pat and Caleb and Lauren and Garrett, for joining us today and sharing this wisdom with us to help us manage through this difficult time. I'd also like to thank AIST for bringing us together for this webinar. To all 128 right now participants who've taken today to invest in themselves, I think that you've really done yourself a benefit. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Lauren Craiglow and to Kurt Edwards from AIST for all of their support to make this event such a success. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Lauren.
Yes. Thank you, Shannon. And thank you to our audience for all of those wonderful questions. I just want to reiterate that thanks myself to Shannon for guiding our discussion and really driving home some of those lessons that the panelists shared today. And of course, thank you to our 4 panelists. Couldn't have done it without you guys, Garrett, Caleb, Pat, and Lauren, for sharing all of your experience and advice. And couldn't go on without saying thank you, obviously, to our young professionals for tuning in today. We really appreciate you guys spending this time with us and hope you enjoyed the discussion and learned some lessons here today. And last but very not least, thank you again to today's webinar sponsor, Tokai Carbon. Before I wrap up, I just want to remind everyone of some more webinars we have coming up. We've got 2 more on deck tomorrow, followed by another digital transformation webinar next week. So definitely visit aist.org/webinars for more details on that full schedule. And one last announcement for anybody that may have joined a bit late. If you are a young professional that's 30 years of age or younger and are not a member of AIST, nor have you ever been a member, you can visit aist.org/YP webinar membership to redeem that special extended offer of free membership through the end of 2021, sponsored by the AIST Foundation. Alrighty, so I think that's everything for today. Thank you all again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at future AIST events. Have a great rest of your day.